and welcome to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and today I'm bringing you the final video in our Colouring for Beginners series, and this video has been prompted by a question that a lot of new colourists ask me a lot, so I thought it was about time to make a video on it. And that question is, how do you pick colours for your colouring pages? So today I'm going to explain the steps that I go through. Now this is definitely not an exhaustive list and the only way that you can pick colours. Obviously everybody is different, but I thought I would give you the ways that I use most often, especially when I was a newer colourist, to help you along and get you started on your colouring journey. I am going to use some examples as I go along as well so that you can see what I'm talking about. I am also going to reference other videos in this series, so I'm going to put a link to the entire playlist at the end card so you can go and have a look at that after you've finished watching this if you want to expand your knowledge a little bit. So the first thing I want to mention is that it very much depends on the page how I personally pick colours. So the first thing that I want to talk about is one specific colour. Now when I'm talking about one colour, there is several reasons why you might have a particular colour in mind. The first one for me is if I maybe have a set of pencils and I have a favourite colour. So my favourite colour is green, and one of my favourite Prismacolor pencils is Peacock Green, which is PC907. It looks a little bit like this. It's a sort of bluey, greeny, teal type colour. I absolutely love this colour. So there may be a time where I have an itch to scratch and I decide that I want to use this colour in one of my colouring pages. So if you have one colour in mind, you can use something like a colour wheel, which will give you options of colours that will complement the one that you've got. Now my green pencil here is probably somewhere in this region. So I can then turn my colour wheel and pick out colours that are going to complement that. I have done a separate video on the colour wheel, and that is in the Colouring for Beginners playlist, so you can check that out at the end card again. So just a quick example here, if I was to say that my pencil was closest to maybe, let's say it's probably somewhere between E and G, but I can then follow, if I want three colours for example, and these are just going to be the main colours for your picture, I can follow my triangle down and it'll give me a sort of orangey shade and a pinky shade. Or if I go with the larger triangle, I'm into more sort of browns. If you come down here, the grey triangle, and a much richer purple colour. So that's giving you three colours to work with straight away. Now when it comes to your actual pencils, it's up to you to then colour match with your pencils, and if you swatch them out, then you will find something that you like. The other option that you have, and it's something I used a lot when I was starting out colouring, is to browse the internet for designers' palettes for a certain colour. And if you go into somewhere like Google or Pinterest and type in turquoise colour palettes, you will get up this absolute deluge of different swatches that are associated with a picture usually. So there's people that have picked out a specific colour, say in a sunset, and then they have matched up complementary colours to go with that. Either that or they have picked out and colour matched things from a particular image. So that is another good way, and again it's just about matching up your pencils after that. So using these two tools, let's do two quick examples here. So I'll just keep this parrot green. So if I decided I needed four colours, I'm going to take my colour wheel here and I'm going to go with the tetrad, which is this sort of oblong shape. So if I put one corner of that up into this region here, and we'll say I'm kind of leaning towards E more than G. So if I then follow this line across, that is taking me into purples, and E is a sort of dark greyish purple. So I can go into my set of pencils then, or even better if you have a swatch book, which I do and have all my pencils swatched out because I'm a smarty pants. We can take a look at our purples and we can pick out what we've got that's closest to what we can see in our colour wheel. So if I'm going for E, which is this one up in the corner here, if I just look along my purples, the dioxazine is pretty close. And this is about getting the best match that you can. But I did say that it was between E and G, so even if I was to go a paler colour, I think that's probably, you're kind of heading towards the lilac, which is quite pink. So you have to make a decision there. Now there's Parma Violet, that fits quite nicely. but it's missing the greys that we've got here. So I would be inclined to go with the dioxazine purple. So let's pull out that pencil. So there we go. So that's you now got two colours. And if we follow the rest of the rectangle down, and we're into this colour here, which is more a sort of reddish brown shade. So we'll go to the reds first and see if we can find one. It's actually almost into a corally colour as well. And I would say that the crimson's quite close, so we'll go with the crimson red as well. And for our last colour, we're into this section here, which gives us this sort of tawny brown colour. And if I just show you here, the sienna brown is quite close as well. It's not perfect, but we are working with pencils here, so we'll go for that as well. So there we go, we have 4 colours. Now if I randomly pick a page in a colouring book, now obviously you would have picked out your colouring, your page that you're after. This is Daydreams by Hannah Carlson, if anybody is interested. And let's just stop right here. Okay, so we've got our frog. He looks like a bit of an unhappy chap, let's be fair. So I can then look at my picture, and I knew that I wanted to use this turquoisey colour. Now, if I decided I wanted to use that on my toadstools, that still leaves me 3 other colours that I can use for the main parts of the picture. So you can then allocate which colour you want to which item, but focus on the large objects in the picture. Now, obviously, the simpler the picture is, the easier it is to do that. But with these colours, I think what I would be tempted to do is use the red for the toadstools, and then I could use the brown for the stalks, and that would leave me the purple and the green, and I could use the purple for these flowers and the one on top of his head, and that would leave me my original green colour for our frog friend. So that's a really good way for you to guide yourself into picking out colours. So the other method I was talking about, which is searching for a colour palette, let's use that as well and see what happens. Okay, so I've picked out the closest pencils to what we had on the palette from the picture. So we have our grey colour and our light sort of turquoisey blue colour, as well as our original pencil. This nice deep red and a deep purple as well. Now what I find interesting about this is, although we did not use a colour wheel, this still fits into colour theory, and you can see that there is an almost overlap because we still have a red shade and we still have a purple shade. So that's quite an interesting exercise in itself. But by going through this lets you learn what goes together, but it's just a really good tool to help you start out. So if we go back to our original picture that we were talking about, back to our frog here, and we can do the same thing again, and we can decide what colours we want to use where. Now for me, because we have a bigger selection of colours, this makes it a lot easier, and some people do find that more difficult, but that's just preference. And I would probably do the same thing again, if I'm honest. I would use the same colours in the same places, but I have this addition of this turquoise shade in the grey, and I could use grey for the sky and use my turquoise colour for my little raindrops, and maybe just some variation down here, something like that. So there you go, you have your colour wheel and you have your palettes. And those are great ways for you to pick out colours when you get started colouring. So I just want to show you some examples of work that I've actually done to show you these in sort of practice, as it were. So the first one I've got here is, this is Animals in Detail. It's Intricate Ink by Tim Jeffs, and this is the first volume, and these books are absolutely beautiful. I love them. And the image that I have here is this seahorse. Now I didn't look up reference images to see what colours these seahorses should be. For this particular picture, I just wanted to use blue and green. That was what I wanted to do. And you will hear people saying a lot, talking about a picture speaking to you, and it can be something as tiny as one little detail, and you just know that that's the colour you want it to be, and that happens more frequently the more experienced you become. So with this, I just wanted to use blue. So if we take a look at the colour wheel here, just to help us a little bit, you can see that I have used colours that are next door neighbours on the colour wheel. So I've gone from blue through to green and then through to yellow. And this is sometimes known as an analogous colour scheme, so as in coming from the word analog. This is a really simple way as well for you to pick colours if you're colouring a more simple subject, you know, where there isn't any sort of background, that kind of thing. So here's an example of somewhere where I have used one of these colour scheme cards that we've just talked about that I looked up, and I wanted a sort of pastel palette, and that is literally what I typed into Google and came up with a few suggestions. And again, there was lots of photographs of like ice creams and macarons, that kind of thing, and all I did was colour match my pencils with the given colours that came up with the photograph, and I have come out with this, and I ended up using it over the 2 pages because I wanted them to mirror each other. So that's a really good example of where I have used one of these photographs for some sort of inspiration when I didn't really know what I was after. The only exception to that in this page is the butterfly. This is from Johanna Basford's Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, and because this is a storybook, I wanted Inky to be the same colour throughout, you know, to keep the continuity throughout the story. But for the rest of the picture, that came from one of these colour palette inspiration photographs. Now I wanted to talk about this one, and we are in Mythomorphia by Kirby Rosanis. And with this, and this is a bit more of an advanced thing, but I wanted to go for colours that depicted a mood rather than matchy colours or colours that would necessarily go together on the colour wheel. Our dude here is pretty grumpy, and you know, but he's pretty menacing looking. So I wanted to use darker colours, but I also wanted to use quite muddy colours. And when I picked out the colours for his skin, initially I picked almost like a lime green, and I realised very quickly that it was too bright and it was too vibrant, and that's when I decided to start going down the shades. So not only can you pick colours from a palette, but you can go by mood and atmosphere as well, and that's something I do a lot more now that I've been colouring for a while. And with more complex pictures as well, don't necessarily keep the idea in your head that you have to have a set colour scheme or a colour palette. The busier the picture is, the harder it's going to be to do that, unless you go for a monochromatic colour scheme whereby you are using blue and only blue, but you'd maybe use like 10 or 12 shades of blue, which is an interesting aesthetic, but when it comes to actually picking colours out, it's not something that you would maybe want to do on a regular basis. So this picture is a prime example of that, and it doesn't matter which way you look at it, that you won't be able to pick out a set colour scheme. I've used greens, I've used browns, I've used ivories, I've got purple down the bottom, I've got red, and I've got really bright yellow as well. So you don't feel that you have to stick to a colour scheme, because that is not necessarily the case. Okay, I've got an example here lastly. This is the Steampunk Special from Colouring Heaven, and it is the Hannah Lynn Special. And I have here, I wanted to include a picture of a person just to give you another example in the sort of variation in ways that you can pick colours. When I started colouring this picture, it was one of the ones that spoke to me, and I knew when I started colouring this that I wanted this lady's hair to be black. That was the only thing I knew about this picture when I started colouring it. Again, there's quite a lot of detail and bits and pieces in the picture. When it comes to dealing with people, it's slightly different because they tend to be a little bit more detailed than, say, our last image of the frog in the rain. So I picked out colours for her clothes and things, and then I did the background completely on a whim. I just literally picked colours at random. Now I know that doesn't sound very helpful, but there is a danger of getting into this samey, very composed feeling when you're drawing and colouring. And especially in an image like this, the chances of this lady's outfit being perfectly coordinated with the room that she's sitting in, it's not very realistic. Now granted, it's not a realistic picture, but it's something to bear in mind, and I feel that a lot of new colourists get really caught up in this having to use complementary colours or matching colour schemes. It is not always the case, it doesn't have to be that way. But what I will say to you is, if you're working on a more complicated picture, it is nice to at least have some sort of matching colours in the focal point of the picture, but not necessarily in the background. So I hope this information is helpful to you as a newer colourist in picking out colours for your colouring pages. So just a quick recap, the two main ways that I would choose colours is using a colour wheel and looking for colour schemes either through Google or Pinterest or that kind of thing. I would ask you to be really careful when you're using those type of websites though, as a lot of the times the information and the photographs that are there are copyrighted and they haven't been approved by the owner of the photograph. That's why I'd recommend somewhere like colourpalettes.net, because they have permission to use those photographs. And in the sort of general spirit of being artists, it's good to respect that and respect other people's work, regardless of whether it's a photograph or otherwise. So if you have a singular colour in mind, or even if you have an array of colours that you're not quite sure what to do with, those are just great ways to get you started in picking them out. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I hope you have a good day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.